Welcome, listeners, to the Grande Bouffe, the Big Feast, with myself, Cole Smithey, and this week's co-host, Mr. James Hancock. You might have seen Mr. Hancock's Geekin' with James Hancock YouTube video, and of course you might listen to his podcast series, Wrong Reel. Welcome, James.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me. I'm going to resist the urge to interview you, which is something I find myself doing when I'm on someone else's podcast.
Nice.
I start trying to seize the reins. I'm just going to chill and enjoy this nice beer you've served me.
Very good. Well, funny that you should mention the beer. So, as you know, we like to copiously consume international politics and culture through the prism of a single film and a different craft beer. Each week, the beer that I have chosen for us is Racer 5 from Beer Republic, because I thought, they're driving this cool Jaguar XKE. Actually, there's a couple of them that show up in the movie. So I thought that was, Racer 5 kind of fits in with the vein of this film.
Hell yeah, 100%.
I know you're a big Mario Bava fan, as am I. And this movie has a really interesting story about how it was made. And there's a lot of fun little details about things like how Catherine Deneuve wasn't originally supposed to play.
Yeah, she was in there for a week.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Would have been quite a different movie.
She was an ex-fiancé.
Yeah, who's the guy who directed Barbarella? I'm blanking on his name. Roger Vadim. Yeah, because
yes.
Basically Dino De Laurentiis was doing a brother and sister production roughly at the same time of Barbarella and Danger Diabolik. And so a lot of crew and or cast kind of went back and forth between the two. But yeah, Mario Bava, he's such a fascinating figure, and I feel like gets far too little love and attention these days. Made so many great horror movies, made good science fiction, and I mean, if you were to look at the golden renaissance of 60s and 70s Italian genre films, it kind of all starts with him. I mean, obviously, I love Sergio Corbucci, and I love Leone, and I love...
See, I love it when people say genre films, because now I have my own, definition of genre. What do you, when you say genre film, what do you mean, James?
I guess unpretentiously entertaining.
My take on genre is that it's that they're typically low budget, and there's always an element of exploitation, some kind of exploitation, whether it be gore or nudity.
I like all the above, and guys like Lucio Fulci and Dario Argento, they were the masters of all that. But I feel like Mario Bava is kind of the unofficial god. It's almost like Jean-Pierre Melville with the French New Wave. I feel like Mario Bava was really like the catalyst that launched this 15, 20-year period, which got just hundreds of wonderful, amazing movies to discover.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of things that I like about this movie, and I think today's audiences, if they watch this movie, you can't help but see it in the context of a comic book movie. Not really superhero movie, even though he does resemble the Phantom, if you remember the Phantom.
Yeah, it's like a super villain movie as opposed to a superhero movie.
Exactly. So yeah, this guy, he's got his hippie chick girlfriend who's arguably a nymphomaniac.
And kind of his partner in crime. I mean, she's in there committing the deeds right alongside him.
Absolutely. And so there's some pot smoking that happens in the movie. Of course, he has the coolest lair. I would say 10 times cooler than Batman's lair.
Yeah, Batman on his best day wishes he was even a fraction as cool as Diabolik. Diabolik is... It makes you wonder what would happen if they actually just threw caution to the wind and did a big-budget supervillain franchise at DC or Marvel. And granted, with Infinity War, we're seeing a movie that's very villain-focused, but this movie doesn't even try to pretend as if he's a hero in any way, shape, or form. He's not an anti-hero. He basically just engages in these acts of daring do so that he can give the most expensive jewelry or the biggest piles of cash to his lady love.
He's like a Thomas Crown kind of guy, where he just does it because he can.
He's showing off.
Yeah, he wants to get away with it. And also, it's intentionally campy. I love the stuff where he's climbing up the thing and he's got the 4 suction cup thing, which is so... I mean, it's not an efficient way to climb up a wall. If it was Jeff Bridges in The Fisher King, he'd just throw a grappling hook. But no, this guy's got to clamp each of the 4 things to make it stick.
It's kind of Ghost Protocol, decades before its time.
It's great, I mean, you enjoy it. Here's what I like about this kind of this particular movie and the style. It's so much about style, and I think from a fan's perspective, when this movie, what year did this movie come out?
I believe 67. Hang on, let me check my notes. Either 66 or 67, maybe as late as 68. Which is the honest. I guess I should just say I don't know. Let me check.
So it's a movie that you're, if you were like a 10 or 11-year-old kid at that
68.
time, you feel like you're playing in the adult pool, and when the adults watch it, they feel like, oh, this is just good cheesy fun with some sexiness thrown in. So I think that, from a cultural perspective, this is a movie I could have seen when I was, I guess, at 68. I was 5 years old.
Yeah, Dino De Laurentiis tried to pull it into more of a family-friendly environment. Mario Bava tried to pull it back to the roots of the comic strip. Apparently, the comic strip is much more violent. This is,
it's based on a. We should say that it's based on a series of Italian comic books. That's
Fumetti.
Okay. Oh, good. I like the accent.
That's how they call their comic strips.
Very nice. See, I like it because I already can tell you're the kind of person who would say provolone, as opposed to provolone, which makes it sound like cardboard. I hate it when people say provolone. It's not provolone, damn it. I guess it has to do with whether you're from the South or.
I mean, you and I are both from Richmond. Yeah, you and I are both from Richmond, but yeah, I guess I get pretentious when talking about movies, but not when I'm talking about my meat and cheese. So,
so anyway, there's a lot of great car chase stuff, which everybody loves. Everybody loves a good car chase. I love the fact that they're driving a Jaguar XKE, which I think most people would agree is the most beautiful sports car ever made. It's so
it is easy on the eyes, yeah,
and sleek, and I love how they speed the camera up just a little, so that it makes the car seem like it's going faster.
Absolutely. And Mario Bava was an absolute master of taking $1 and making it seem like 10. Apparently, according to legend, who knows if this is actually true, but Dino De Laurentiis, he fired the original director and he brought in Mario Bava and offered him a $3 million budget to complete the film. And Mario Bava was like, give me $500,000. Like he's loved like.
He's like a Roger Corman guy.
Yeah, he loved to see how quickly and inexpensively he could do things, and was a master of using like matte paintings and models and things like that. And so Barbarella is a much more lavish production, and once again, according to legend, when the movie was finished, Dino De Laurentiis said, well, with the money left over, do you want to just quickly bang out a sequel? And Mario Bava was ready to move on to other projects because apparently he and Dino,
there were
didn't get along.
There were lawsuits because there were so many other people that were hip to what he was doing, and they wanted to do stuff and rip him off and do stuff in a similar style and make money because they knew that he was doing this movie. And so there was a series of lawsuits that he had as a result of that.
Yeah, and Dino was also suing people that with similar sounding names. Like, the Italians are the undisputed masters of unofficial ripoffs, unofficial sequels, remakes, all that good stuff. And there are a couple different movies that Dino tried to block from being released or make them change their names. And I thought I'd copied and pasted it into my notes, but apparently I did not. In any case, Dino was very protective of this franchise, which sadly underperformed at the time of its release.
Yeah, well, I you can kind of understand it because this movie, well, its name, Danger Diabolik. I keep wanting to, because I'm so familiar with the French Diabolik.
Oh, the Henry George Clouzot?
Yeah.
That's a good movie.
That I want to call it Diabolik, but it's really Diabolik.
Yeah, especially the version I've always watched has this horrible kind of English dub where they just call him Diabolik. They take Michel Piccoli, one of the finest actors who's ever lived.
Love it.
And it's like they cast like a random drunk from a pub. They just grabbed him at random, like, come in and do Michel Piccoli's voice because you can speak English.
Well, this is what I really want to say about this movie is that it's so highbrow, lowbrow. And I'm a big fan of highbrow, lowbrow. My wife's mother was in town couple weeks ago. We went over to the King Cole bar at the St. Regis, and then we went over to an Irish dive bar. And I just love that experience in life and in movies. And this, I feel like, really has that. I love the scene when the truck driver pulls up, and of course she's wearing what her name is, Eva Can't, and obviously Eva can and does, played by Marissa Mel, the great Marissa Mel, and it's just, of course, it's a sweaty guy driving a big truck. There's a scantily clad hippie on the side of the road with a broken down car.
I'm so tired. I'm so sleepy now.
She's gonna play that guy 6 Ways from Sunday. Sure, it's cheesy and it's expected and all that stuff, but you love that. It's fun. It's just fun.
And contrary to some of the Bond films from the 60s, because if you like Bond films from the 60s, you're definitely gonna like Danger Diabolik. But a lot of the famous Bond girls from the 60s were definitely there more for TNA as opposed to being like a badass character. And I think the character played by Marissa Mel is actually pretty cool. And there's this great scene early on. People always complain complaining about sexism in Bond movies, and that's their right. I like the sexism in Bond movies, but there's a great scene after the first heist where they're kind of grooming themselves before their evening of lovemaking. Of course, the camera's lingering on Marissa Mills. She's taking a shower, but then it pans over and it lingers on Diabolik grooming himself.
And I love the shower. They've got these there's a giant round piece of plastic that's just hanging there. At first you think it's maybe paint on the side of the shower, but no, there is no side of the shower. It's just this giant piece of plastic that's dangling there to block her naughty bits.
And his naughty bits. And of course, what they do with the money, they don't spend it, they don't invest it, they don't do anything. They just bury themselves under a mountain of cash so that they can make passionate love beneath all these dollars they've stolen. And yeah, they're like, as you mentioned before, their lair is this vast, giant network, like this space age bachelor pad in a lot of ways.
Filmed in the Blue Grotto in Capri.
Oh, interesting.
That? Yeah, do you know about the Blue Grotto?
I do not.
So this place, it has this luminescent blue light inside the grotto, and I don't know which scenes are filmed. I guess it's the lair. I don't know how they built the lair in the grotto, how they did it, but anyway, there's a big deal made about the fact that the film was shot at a Fiat plant in Turin. You might think of The Turin Horse, which is a great movie, if you have ever seen that one. But
Bellatar?
Yeah, Bellatar. So that's in Rome, but then they used the famous Blue Grotto in Capri. And it's beautiful. It's a really lovely space.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But so this movie came out, it's the same time that in America, there was the great Batman series that all kids love.
Absolutely.
The Green Hornet, all of the James Bond stuff that was coming out around that time.
Like You Only Live
Thunderball.
Twice. Actually, this was probably the same year as On Her Majesty's Secret Service, I bet.
Oh.
Or either that or You Only Live Twice, but that era.
Okay, so this is before Thunderball.
Oh yeah, Thunderball was 71.
Gotcha. And then is Goldfinger after Thunderball?
Goldfinger 63.
Oh, it's before.
Yeah, but the villain in this is the same villain from Thunderball, different voice, but it's the same actor.
Oh, I knew there was some Thunderball thing going. My parents took me, the first double feature that I ever went to at a drive-in was Thunderball and Goldfinger.
That's a good double feature.
It was a really good double feature.
Yeah, I like those movies a lot. But there's something funny about watching this movie where it is a low-budget, quote-unquote, genre film, and there are lengthy sequences where the movie's like completely inert and almost lifeless, where you start to think like, why am I watching this? And then suddenly it'll just shift gears, and this extraordinary score by Ennio Morricone will come in, and you're like, oh, this movie's magical and beautiful. And it really, there's a strong ebb and flow. And the movie's about an hour and 40 minutes, and probably about half of that is completely forgettable. But when the production design and the music and the performances are all kind of in harmony with one another, it really becomes a special experience. If you like those kind of, if you like Ennio Morricone, I feel like this is required viewing.
Absolutely, and I also like how it has an apocalyptic quality to it as well, where we get all of the pillars of society exploding. There's, what I'm talking about. There's a sequence where we see, the financial institutions exploding and everything. So he's just
nobody has to pay their taxes.
Yeah, Diabolik is destroying society, and I can't remember the great British actor who
plays like the Ministry of Finance or Minister of Finance or whatever.
Comes out, he's got the gap in his teeth. And that guy's he is just hamming it up so hardcore.
Yeah, there's like a really nihilistic quality to this movie.
There is.
And I love how when at one point the bad guys take Marissa Mel hostage, and they're basically going to try and get this valuable necklace back from Diabolik. And I love how he grabs the bad guy, throws himself bodily out of a plane, and just blows up the whole plane behind him and everybody with it. I mean, and he does everything with this devilish, demonic laughter. Like, it's a very wooden, rigid, kind of one-note performance that's done mostly with his eyebrows.
Well, I see. We're talking about John Philip Law, and that's how he got cast, because he studied the comic book and he realized that it was so much of his performance had to come through his eyebrows. And so when he auditioned for Dino De Laurentiis, he came in and he did all the eyebrow work, as they say in the biz, and that got him the gig. Yeah,
and also he's got like a classic beanpole body. He was also in Barbarella, which is one of the ways he kind of got his foot in the door.
Well, this movie informed Barbarella, right? I mean, I don't think would Barbarella have been made if this movie hadn't been made?
I think Dino was he was spearheading both productions at the same time, because I know there was some back and forth between the crew members, and so I don't think it was like a chicken versus the egg. I think they were basically both underway. Because there's a little mini renaissance of comic strip adaptations in Europe at the time, including other movies like Satanic and Mrs. Stiletto and Baba Yaga. But apparently, for whatever reason, there's a brief shining moment long before it was kind of discovered in America where comic strips as opposed to comic books were being adapted into these glorious kind of Eurotrash movies. And yeah, Eurotrash, I remember when I used to live in LA, there's this video store called The Cinephile, and they just had a Eurotrash section. I was like, what does that mean? But it's like you were talking about earlier. It's an interesting mix of highbrow and lowbrow where they're trashy topics but shot in a loving, artful way.
Well, yeah, and the costumes, of course, the guys wearing suits, but between the hippie chicks in the movie, I mean, some costume designer just went wild.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love how Diabolik, he's either like completely nude, wearing a skin-tight black bodysuit, a skin-tight white bodysuit,
right,
or he has his like space-age outfit at the very end where he says he could hang out in like the heart of a star. And we get that great shot where
he's
like,
the heart of the sun.
Yeah, he's sitting there with like this giant gun that he's going to use to melt all this gold, and you see like the camera just pans up and we see him through her perfectly spread legs, and it's just, he looks up and get that great distorted angle of her looking down at him. But yeah, is it trashy? Certainly. But is it gloriously entertaining? 100%.
Yeah, and it also shows that he as smart as he thinks he is, he's still got some learning to do, because yeah, taking a blowtorch to that thing. Oh, and also we got to talk about the undersea thing when he retrieves this giant. It supposedly weighs 20 tons or something, and they throw a few balloons.
It's fine. They got it. But it's like a magical sequence where they're underwater in their scuba gear, kind of communicating with their eyes.
Well, I was gonna say, that yellow. What do you call that thing? It's that they're driving in. They've got this underwater vehicle.
Yeah, it's just yet another relic from the 60s that I don't know if it has.
It's so 60s, and you just love it. I don't even know if that's a real. Did they create? It's probably just a prop. They just made it for the movie, but it looks great. It looks like it would work.
Someone should do like a really cool graphic novel where all the late 60s genre characters interact. You get like Diabolik, Bond, Batman, Green Hornet, Bruce Lee, like why not? And just kind of throw them all together into one story. But there's something special about these late 60s genre characters when these movies were still low. I mean, now all of our escapist entertainment franchises are, $300 million movies.
Yeah.
But back then they were still small, modest productions, and it just adds a certain charm.
Okay, so I'm going to give away a great idea. I've had this idea for a long time. I think you could do it with songs and with films. If there was some kind of program where, for example, you wanted to have Stiv Bators be the singer for the Ramones, and you could write a new song. So you could come up with a song that was a Dead Boys song, but with the Ramones as the backing band. And the same for movies. If you could somehow do exactly what you're saying, where you had a program where you could create a script that just generated all of these things, you could put all these things together, that would just be the most awesome thing.
Yeah, it's like you just need like Enter the Dragon, but somehow throw all these other characters into the mix where they all have to
interact,
fight
they have
to
to
the
fight.
death.
Yeah, they have to do stuff.
Yeah, it's a special time. Maybe I'm more nostalgic about it because I wasn't alive yet at this time.
What year were you born?
76.
Oh, okay.
And so, like, and I grew up on comics and that sort of thing, but there's something about the movies that are made before you're born where you just have a certain, like, awe and respect that you don't necessarily have for the movies that come out during your own lifetime. And maybe that's just kind of an obnoxious snobbery or bit of snobbery on my part, but...
Well, I was lucky because I was living in Richmond when the Biograph Cinema was really rolling it out.
I'm embarrassed to admit I don't know the Biograph Cinema.
So the Biograph's on Gray Street. I grew up at 1124 West Grace,
Gotcha.
between Ryland and Lombardi, I think.
Okay.
And right in the heart of VCU. And 2.5 blocks away, between Harrison and I can't remember the other street, was the Biograph Cinema. There was an art. There was Lee Art, which was the XXX porn place.
Nice.
And then just further downtown by a block was the Biograph Cinema.
Gotcha. Yeah, I hit the Bird a few times, but
the Bird.
Yeah, the Bird's still up and running.
Awesome. I love the Bird.
But yeah, I saw my first screening of The Doors there. I saw actually like a double feature of The Rocketeer and The Doors at the Bird, and that was an
I saw
interesting
101
experience.
Dalmatians when it came out at the Bird.
Wow. I saw a re-release of Cat Ballou at the Bird, which was an interesting thing. But my dad's a big Jane Fonda fan, so I was like, yeah, we're going to Cat Ballou.
I saw Gone with the Wind at the Bird.
God damn. Yeah, but for people who don't know, the Bird is one of these old-fashioned movie palaces, and it's got, the organ and like just that rich decor inside. And I love those theaters from the 20s and 30s because they truly were a movie palace where you felt like you're walking into the nave of a giant cathedral.
Yeah, it's the equivalent, the West Coast equivalent, I think, would be the Castro Cinema in San Francisco, which is where I saw 1900 for the first time.
Yeah, LA, the big ones that still remain that are still old school, like the El Capitan Theater is old school as hell, but like the Egyptian has been completely modernized from the within, so it doesn't have that old school flavor anymore. But yeah, sadly, they're not a lot of those theaters that still remain.
I know, and for places like the Bird, I mean, I don't know if I'll ever return to Richmond, Virginia again, just because I hate the South.
Gotcha, fair enough. I'm there like once a month. It's not bad.
But yeah, I think that
still got the largest catfish on the planet in the James River. If you want to go fishing for catfish, they got these true leviathans because they have no predators that hunt them down.
When I lived in Richmond, it was the rape capital of the country.
Oh, gotcha.
I got held up at gunpoint at the Hamilton Street McDonald's when I was 16.
I was there when we were shooting Hannibal there, summer 2000, and a lot of the crews from New York and from London and LA, and they all felt like they knew the street, blah, blah, blah. And we kept warning everybody, Richmond at night, down in Shockoe Bottom, can be dangerous, no matter how streetwise you think you are.
Yeah.
They didn't listen. The prop department tried to walk from the Jefferson Hotel down to Shockoe Bottom to grab a drink, and they got stabbed, and one of them got like his head kicked in, and like they all lived.
What year was that?
Summer 2000.
Whoa.
Yeah, but I remember one guy showed up for work, and the entire side of his head was just giant bruises from like kicking him in the side of the head repeatedly.
Oh, it's awful.
But we're like, yes, do you hear me now? And so yeah, finally people started to listen.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid there, you'd see there'd be bicycle gangs. There'd be like 12 or 13 guys, and you'd spot them from about a block or two away. And
something very creepy about that, because they're not as slow as like a biker gang. They're a bicycle gang. They come at you at a leisurely pace.
Yeah, but they're coming is the thing. And if they catch you, it's
how's that not a great 80s horror movie? Yeah, like
I know.
A bicycle gang. I mean, you can already see like this great like backlit shot of just these creepy kids coming toward you on bicycles.
No, I was on a skateboard once downtown, and I had to escape through the Greyhound bus station.
Gotcha. Yeah. Bikes will outrun a skateboard anytime.
But the Greyhound bus station there goes through the block somehow, and I escaped onto Broad Street from the back area.
And Broad Street wasn't necessarily a place you wanted to escape to, because Broad Street could be pretty shady.
especially downtown. But I went to this great alternative high school called Open High School, which is still there. It's changed considerably. Amy Mann went there. Amy Mann was in the grade above me, but we were in the same effective homeroom together.
Did you go to any early like high school performances by her? Or?
No, if she was not a musician yet, but we did have. I mean, for a school of 140 people, we had a lot of bands. The Rage was a big punk band. We had another band called Chaos, another punk band called the Degenerate Blind Boys.
Didn't Guar come from Richmond?
Yes, they're also from Richmond.
Yeah.
But yeah, Amy Mann was in my homeroom, and I have to say she was a very sweet person to me. She was very nice to me and very nice person when we were in high school together.
Yeah, when what the hell's that movie? Magnolia came out, I definitely went through a phase where I was playing a lot of her tunes on a loop. She's the real deal.
She is. Totally. Great voice. Great songwriter.
Well, getting back to Diabolik, there's one person I wanted to make sure we didn't overlook, but the production designer in this movie, his only production designer credit, but Carlo Rambaldi, he would go on to do special effects on a lot of really famous movies, like including Zulawski's Possession.
Possession.
Yeah, or a little...
We've done that on the podcast.
Yeah, that's a good one. I love Possession.
Oh, it's so crazy.
He designed the creature for it.
I did not know that.
He also designed the creature for a little movie called Alien.
Nice.
And E.T. and Dune. So yeah, but before he was a famous special effects designer, he was a production designer on Danger Diabolik. So yeah, very stacked crew on this particular movie.
That is so interesting, because that's the thing about this movie. I would say, of course, it's style over content, but you expect that because it's called Danger Diabolik, goddammit.
Yes. It's not called The Garden of the Finzi Continis or something like that. This is, all show, but no depth.
No, but, it's very showy. And that's what I was thinking about this movie is you could tell that when they were Oh, I like your shirt. I finally just noticed that you have.
Yeah, it's a Def Leppard diploma shirt. The IFC Center here in New York, they do these great rock and roll albums and filmmaker combinations. They have one for Bellatar, but they've got one for Bergman, one for Scorsese. But this one, they took the Def Leppard emblem and the diploma name and
so cool.
slammed them together.
That is awesome. Boy, you totally threw me for a loop with that. I did not expect that.
Yeah, my favorite's the one they did with Buñuel and Bauhaus. They combined those together.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that one.
That's a good one.
I gotta get that one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Sheesh, they sell those at IFC?
They do indeed.
We're plugging IFC left and right here.
Where the T-shirts go up to 11.
There you go. Nice.
That's how they advertise.
Yeah,
them.
my wife's bar is right around the corner from there.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
Yeah. The Blind Tiger. And I'm sure if you are ever in town, it's on the same street where Bob Dylan lived. On Jones.
Bleecker in the 60s, that whole Bleecker and Jones, that whole area in the 60s was just a treasure trove of interesting comedians and musicians and so on and so forth. And there's still little relics from the era. I mean, mostly now it's just NYU, but like you mentioned before, we've got the Comedy Cellar there, you got the Village Underground, you got some fantastic movie theaters like the Film Forum and the Angelica. So yeah, I lived in that neighborhood for 7 years and loved every second of it.
And the Quad just went through a major renovation.
I just moved 2 blocks from the Quad. I'm now at 11th and 6th, so the Quad is now my friendly neighborhood theater.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Have you been there? Have you visited there?
Not since they reopened it yet, but a couple friends of mine went to the Al Pacino Festival they had recently, and he showed up for a bunch of the screenings, and he was even there for a screening of Revolution, which was the movie that sent him into like a period of relative, almost like semi-retirement for a couple of years before he came back. And,
well, I certainly feature Al Pacino on my walking tour. I do a walking tour of Carnegie Hill along Museum Mile and the Devil's Advocate house where Charlize Theron and Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino all live, where he goes nuts in the penthouse is right up on Fifth Avenue. Yeah,
I guess the only landmark near my place right now, I'm 1 block away from that scene in Carlito's Way when he's standing on the roof in the rain, looking through the window of all the girls doing the ballet dancing, and he's seeing Penelope Ann Miller. That is 1 block south of where I live. And so, yeah, you're walking down 6, and you can see it clear as day. So that music from that scene always comes into my head.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
New York's such a great town for that kind of stuff.
Hell yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Because you're walking. You get the chance to actually soak in the details around you. And if you're a movie buff, yeah, it's a treasure trove of interesting landmarks.
So tell us more about you, James, about the stuff that you work on, and what keeps you so passionate about cinema. Because I love having a true cinephile on the show. I think you're the first true cinephile that we've had.
No way.
Welcome.
We had Jeremy Workman on. He's a massive cinephile.
That's true, because he keeps notes. He has a little diary of every movie he's ever seen. So you're right, but you're in good company.
Yeah, he came on Wrong Reel to do an episode. We did an episode just about 1971 with Chico Leo, where we covered all of our favorite movies from that year. We did a 1982 episode. What the hell else we did? Oh, we did a Paul Schrader episode on Filmwax Radio, which was a lot of fun. But
you guys do long. Some of your podcasts are 2 hours long.
The longest one we did was 4, because we tried to cover the entire career of John Carpenter in 1 episode.
Oh my god!
And I had to tap out my guest, J. Blake Fischera, who'd actually interviewed Carpenter a few times. He came on, and he's a blues musician, so he can talk and sing for hours.
How many?
We basically filled up an SD card.
I was gonna say, how many mics did you have going?
Two? We just had 2, but at the 4-hour mark, I was like, Blake, I think I'm done. Like, I can't talk anymore. Like,
I think you filled up your 64 SD card.
Put a fork in me. I'm done. But yeah, he was ready. He was ready to keep going. But on Wrong Reel, we do a lot of filmography episodes where we will either tackle like a chapter in a filmmaker's career, or if we can, do the entire career at once. Like, I just posted one last night of all of David Lean's movies prior to becoming a world famous director. I was listening to that.
Epics. That was great. And not only that, but you guys also include audio clips from the films.
Absolutely.
Like Brief Encounter, which is one of my favorite movies.
It's a staggering movie.
Oh my goodness, It's so British. It is so. I think if you ever wanted to just introduce somebody to British culture, watch this movie and you'll know what it's about.
A very celibate but very passionate romance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We don't say much. We don't.
It's all contained, but yeah. Stephen Saunders from Screen Mayhem was laughing about how when it came out that a lot of their European neighbors in France and Italy and Spain were watching like, why don't they just have sex? Like, this is so confusing to us. They couldn't process this kind of like pot like boiling over kind of intensity to the movie. They're like, well, why don't they just do it?
And you're from Richmond, so you know about that stuff, because Richmond was a very provincial. I don't know how it is now, but it was a very provincial place when I was growing up there. And so
there's a lot of Anglophilia there as well. A lot of people who have almost like a semi kind of fake English accent in a lot of ways, and it's not just in Richmond, but lots of parts of the South where it's like we're from the South and we live in a house, and you're like, are you Canadian or English? Like, what is this accent you're using? But there's a lot of that in Richmond. But yeah, a lot of my family members will watch anything with an English accent, and so yeah. But with David Lean though, apart from Brief Encounter and then the later epics like Bridge on the River Kwai Ford, I was largely ignorant of everything he had done, including like all the films written by Noel Coward, the Charles Dickens adaptations. So it was a great opportunity for me. I think that's the key to remaining a cinephile is you got to have new frontiers.
How do you have enough hours in your life to watch all those movies and do that? I mean, because, you know...
I'm an unrepentant bachelor.
Oh, well, that explains it. Yeah, I'm married. I can't do that. My wife won't yeah. That...
Unless you have a wife who's a massive movie nerd as well.
No, she likes movies, but she's also into Bosch. Like, she just binged the whole new season of Bosch.
I heard it's a damn good show.
It's so good. That guy Titus is amazing. Like, he finally found his calling.
Absolutely.
And yeah, he's great. And I love how they had, like, the funicular in L.A.
We had actor
Angel's Flight.
Xander Berkeley came on the podcast one time, and his wife is on Bosch, and he was saying, "How come you haven't watched Bosch?" And I was like,
"I'm watching movies, man."
Yeah, I'm watching other stuff. But yeah, he's very proud of the show because his wife, I think, does very, very well in it as well. But the key to remaining engaged with being a cinephile is you gotta always return to the well and have new discoveries to get you excited again. Like when you're like 20 and you're just getting into movies, you can every day of your life watch 4 or 5 masterpieces in a row, and it's very easy to remain a cinephile when you're discovering all these new frontiers. But when you're 40 and it's like, well, shit, well, like what is left? But the honest answer is there's always something left to discover.
There's so much left. Yeah, John Coble's Top 100 Films. Do you know that book?
I'm unfamiliar with it.
I'll show it to you before you leave. There's a book, John Coble's Top 100 Films, and he was a journalist and a still photographer. So he took a lot of still photography. You know, he was one of those guys who would go to the set and shoot, you know, stills of what they were filming, and he surveyed 80 different critics and directors to get their top 10 films, and he condensed that into the top 100 films. John Coble's Top 100. And I ran across this book when I was living in San Francisco, and I said, well, I guess because at the time I was studying acting, I went to San Diego State to study acting, and then I lived in my van in Salinas when I got a acting scholarship to Hartnell, and I felt like, well, as a film actor, the least I can do is have watched the top 100 films of all time. So everything is Abel Ganss's Napoleon, all that stuff, and
that can be tough to find though.
It can be, but that's the thing is, once you get through all those, you realize there's so much more. It's never ending.
There are thousands upon thousands, and I've never met a cinephile who knows it all. Like usually most cinephiles know certain periods or certain regions really well. Like even someone like Scorsese or Bogdanovich or Tarantino, like the famous cinephile directors, right? Even they will admit, like Bogdanovich is like, well, I know like from 1960 backwards, but beyond that, like I was too busy working and making movies.
I want to talk about Deadlier Than the Male. Do you know that movie?
I do not.
So it's on YouTube, just like this is. A Danger Diabolik is on YouTube, and when I dialed this one up, it brought up Deadlier Than the Male, which I had the pleasure of watching when Quentin Tarantino was the president in Cannes, whatever year that was, and Teresa Russell, and they showed these movies on the beach in Cannes every night of the festival. They have a screen set up out in the water.
And I'm sure trays of champagne and all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, and they give you a blanket because it gets cold at night in Cannes, which is the festival is about to start any second. And May 8th through the 15th. But yeah, so there was Teresa Russell and...
Love her.
And Quentin Tarantino. He introduced Deadlier Than the Male, which is also in the vein of this movie where it's of course, there is a James Bond element to this movie, but it's a James Bond knockoff, and it's great. And so there's Quentin Tarantino and Teresa Russell finishing off a couple bottles of vino, a few lawn chairs.
He's hard to miss in public. He's a big dude. Like I've seen him twice ever in public. One time I was waiting to get into the restaurant. Is it Toy or Koi? Some Thai place in L.A. But he's tall and has this enormous skull, and of course he's loud. And then I was the date of animator Bill Plimpton to go see.
We got to talk about your Bill Plimpton
the New York premiere of Hateful Eight, and Tarantino was in the lobby. It was just the Ziegfeld before it closed down. He was in the lobby of the Ziegfeld, just whining and dining and glad handing with everybody. But he stands like a half a foot taller than everybody else in the room, so you can't miss him. But some idiot came behind him, threw a camera in front of the two of them. He tried to take a selfie, and he whirled on him and was like, when I'm at the cinema, it's like being in church. This is like a sacred place. You do not do that. I was insanely disrespectful. And I was just then like kind of leaning in to try to shake hands. I was like, well, I'm going to skip this opportunity. And I retreated. But that was a lot of fun. But Bill Plimpton, animator here in New York, I first saw his stuff as a kid with like the MTV logo on the tongue, and a lot of his shorts on Liquid Television. Like late 80s, early 90s was when he really came into fame. He had a short film called Your Face, which got nominated for an Oscar. And I kind of was a fan from a distance for many, many years. Saw him speak when he introduced Hair High at Sundance back in '04. But when I moved here to New York, I guess a couple years had gone by, but I met him at New York Comic Con, and then I saw that he was doing a Kickstarter campaign to restore an old silent film by Winsor McKay, and I just cold called him and said, hey, if you, I do a little kind of venture capital stuff. If you ever have any film projects that you want to discuss, I would love to talk about being a possible backer. And he's an independent filmmaker, so he's not going to say no to ready money.
Right.
And so I came in very casually, but flash forward a few years, and I'm his executive producer on a feature film, Cheatin', and I'm his producer on 2 short films, Cop Dog and Lonely Stoplight. Lonely Stoplight had Patton Oswalt in it.
Nice.
And but Cop Dog just came out on iTunes last week.
Wow.
And if you just, there's 2 Cop Dogs in this world. One is a live-action kids movie with a boy and his dog. Don't rent that one. But please rent Cop Dog, directed by Bill Plimpton, and leave us a rating and review. It would be most helpful. But it's the 5th in his series of dog movies, the first of which also got nominated for an Oscar, called Guard Dog. But it's kind of his Mickey Mouse character, and every couple of years he'll dust off the character and do another short featuring this character.
Cool. All right, so I got to tell my Quentin Tarantino story.
Bring it on.
So, I 91, 92, whenever the Rodney King riots were, whatever year that was, I think it was 92, I had gotten a gig to do, a volunteer gig at the American Pavilion through this guy, Christian. He called me and he said, we've accepted you, you're going to come down and do this. So I got my plane ticket and everything. And then he calls me like 2 weeks later and says, oh yeah, we're not really going to be able to accommodate you. You can't do it. And I said, well, I've already bought my ticket, so I'm going to be there, so we'll just see what happens, play it by ear. So I came through New York. I stayed with my buddy Ted Rall. He's a cartoonist and author and social commentator, all sorts of stuff. But he was staying with a investment banker and his wife, friends, in this 16-room maisonette up on Fifth Avenue at 96th Street. And so, of course, I fell in love with the Upper East Side and Museum Mile and all that stuff. Stayed there for 5 nights or whatever, and then went to Paris, and then hitchhiked to Cannes from Paris. And so I strolled up a few nights before at the American Pavilion. There was a British guy who's putting the pavilion together. He's like, oh, yeah, help me out. You can stay here and, blah, blah, blah.
Score.
So I get thrown, but then the American Pavilion people show up, and they're like, well, who the hell are you? We don't want you here. And I said, and at that time, they had these different booths. So there was like the IFP people from Northern California. I was a member of IFP Northern California at that time because I was living in San Francisco, and I had already connected with those people. And they're like, oh yeah, you can man the booth, blah, blah, blah. And so I said, well, I don't know, what if you know, but I'm connected with the IFP, and so I'll be doing this. So I'm kind of here whether you like it or not. But during all this time, I was sleeping in the Palais. I had an actor badge, so I would go in and I would sleep in cinemas, empty cinemas, in my tux, because I had nowhere to be. And so after a few days of this, I'm seeing movies, whatever, and I meet this German girl on the Palais, and she's standing there on the beach with her sunglasses, looking very, don't come near me. Excusez-moi, mademoiselle, parlez-vous anglais? Yes, I do. And I'm an actor, la 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 la. Oh, really? Well, I'm on my way to I can't remember what a casting, and you can come with me if you want. So anyway, long story short, we both get cast in this thing. It's Gaumont they're doing a filmmaking course in Cannes, and so they have, the whole crew, screenwriters and everything, people that have written their own short story, short scripts. So all of a sudden they're putting me up in an apartment. My luck changed completely overnight because I was really ready to just throw it. It was the first time I'd ever been that far away from home. I was ready to just. What's
that old expression? Like 90% of life or success is just showing up. Like sometimes things just fall into place.
That was it. And so somehow we got tickets to see the premiere of Reservoir Dogs.
Holy shit, that's a good one.
And then we come out, because it's the Grand Palais. You come out on the red carpet. And so, all the paparazzis lined up on all sides, and there's this girl that I've never seen before, but we're there at the same time. This very pretty girl. We just look at each other, give each other the nod, grab hands, and walk down, and the paparazzi are snapping all sorts of photos. I never saw her again.
And was it a controversial reaction at the time? Because I know sometimes he's been booed at Cannes, and sometimes people freak out.
You got to say can.
Cannes.
Can, yeah. Just can. And so then the next day, I'm in the Palais where all the press lockers are, and near where they give the press conferences, and there's QT right next to me. And he's talking. I hear that voice, and but no one knew him at that time.
Yeah, he was Mr. Brown at that point. Like he'd sold True Romance and Natural Born Killers, but he wasn't a famous filmmaker.
And so I told him, I said, man, your movie just kicked my ass. I couldn't believe it. They're knots in my stomach. And he said, oh, that's just what I want to hear. Blah blah blah. So I met Quentin Tarantino before anyone knew who he was at the Cannes premiere. Right after the next day.
Yeah, he was probably 29 at that point or something like that. I mean, he was probably a child.
That's probably about, because he's the same. I think he's about the same age as me. I think he was born about 63.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, about the same age I was. Although he seemed a lot more what's the word? Worldly than I felt anyway.
When that movie came out, he definitely got his first exposure to the outside world, traveling to all these festivals.
But he was ready for it.
Yeah,
he was ready for it. I mean, obviously, clearly from that movie and everything that he's done since. I love Quentin Tarantino, and I really am looking forward to his next movie.
Hell yeah! Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I feel like people love to bash him for whatever reason because it makes him feel cool. I like his movies on different levels depending on which movie you're talking about, but I am a fan. I feel like every scrap of film he's ever shot, even the movies that are bad, is imbued with an absolute unbridled love and affection for cinema.
What do you think's his worst movie?
His worst movie, in my opinion, and I still like this movie. I've seen it 3 times. I saw it twice in 70mm. I think Hateful Eight is probably structurally the weakest and has one giant chunk of the flashback where you could remove it from the movie entirely. But I think in the absence of his longtime editor, he has too few peers who are willing to say no to him if a line of dialogue or a particular scene isn't working. I think partnering up with Sally Menke early on was one of the best things that ever happened to him. They were a great team, but because he looked up to her, he was willing to respect her opinion when she said, that doesn't work, or that sounds self-indulgent, or grammatically sounds illiterate, like whatever the case might be. And so I think her presence is missed.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be very interesting to see what he does next. Personally, I think Jackie Brown, I have to revisit it because I've only seen it once.
Interesting. I've seen it a lot.
What do you think of Jackie Brown?
I like it quite a bit, but it definitely feels, it's an adaptation. It's his only adaptation, and it definitely feels like an adaptation.
Yeah.
I prefer his wild, crazy, unhinged, unbridled movies like Inglourious Bastards and things like that, where it's just like they might be inconsistent, but it's just the full Tarantino experience.
It is, and those set pieces in Inglourious Bastards are just phenomenal.
Yeah, the Cafe Underground might be. I think it's the favorite scene. I think it's the best scene he's ever shot.
I agree. It's so good. The farmhouse scene's really good too.
Hell yeah. Well, we've switched gear from Mario Bava to Tarantino, which I'm sure he would appreciate because he loves Mario Bava. Yeah, he is a fan of Italian genre cinema.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for coming on Le Grand Bouffe, The Big Feast, Mr. Hancock. And so, listeners out there, please do yourselves a favor and check out Wrong Reel podcast. It's awesome, and it's so cinephile oriented.
Well, so we will get you on to Geek Out About Movies in the very near future. We'll let you pick a topic of your choice, and we will throw down.
Okay, I can't wait. And also, please remember to turn your cell phones off when you're walking, driving, riding a bicycle, or watching a movie. Le Grand Bouffe, The Big Feast is a production of Smart New Media.